Hey, hey you, listening right now. Yeah, you, the one everyone swore was just regular. Come closer for a second. You ever notice how people get real comfortable putting you in that tiny little box they built in their heads? Like they swear they've already decoded you. Like you're some easy-to-read manual they skimmed once and decided, yup, predictable. They walk around, acting like your entire destiny was written on your face, as if you didn't have whole galaxies tucked behind your silence. And you let them think that, didn't you? You let them misjudge you, underestimate you, dismiss you. You played along with their, oh, they're just normal narrative, because, why would you spend energy proving anything to people who never planned to clap for you in the first place? And that's the part they never understood about you. You weren't quiet because you were weak. You were quiet because you were loading. See, people get nervous around mystery. They get nervous when they can't read you. But instead of admitting they felt threatened by your potential, they tried to convince themselves you were harmless, average, safe. They thought you were the kind of person who would always stay where they left you. Someone who would watch other people win, nod politely, and call it a day. Someone who wouldn't dare shift the ground beneath their feet. But, then came that moment, your moment, when something in you just snapped into alignment. That switch flipped. That internal lock clicked. That quiet voice inside went, yeah, rise. And suddenly you weren't moving like them anymore. You weren't thinking like them anymore. You weren't even playing the same game they thought you were playing. You evolved while they weren't looking, and when you came back, you didn't walk back in as the version they remembered. You walked in as the version they never imagined they'd have to deal with. You went God tier, and it shook their entire nervous system. Because when a person shifts from background character to main event, everybody who underestimated them gets exposed in HD. They don't just get surprised, they get embarrassed. Watching you grow forced them to face the truth. They weren't ignoring someone ordinary. They were ignoring someone dangerous, someone rare, someone built for levels they couldn't even visualize. Your glow didn't just threaten them, it detonated their comfort zone. And, you know what really messed them up? The fact that you didn't announce the transformation. You didn't warn them. You didn't post a countdown. You didn't tell them, watch me. You just became. One day they looked over and there you were, operating on a frequency they didn't even know existed, doing things they had spent their whole lives telling themselves were impossible, making moves with precision, clarity, depth, and execution they couldn't match if you handed them step-by-step instructions. Your elevation wasn't loud, but the impact? Oh, it echoed. And their ambition? It couldn't handle it. They wanted to keep up, but every time they tried, they felt that burn in their chest, that panic, that why am I not enough spiral. They tried to imitate your confidence, but imitation cracks fast when the original is powered by purpose. They tried to chase your path, but running in circles doesn't count as progress. They tried to mirror your energy, but your energy wasn't coming from aesthetics. It was coming from truth, pain, discipline, transformation, and a level of self-awareness they've never dared to touch. Watching you ascend didn't just discourage them. It self-destructed the illusions they had about themselves. You became the walking contradiction to their excuses. You became the proof that the barriers they swore were impossible were actually just comfortable lies. You became the reminder that the only thing separating them from evolution was their refusal to confront themselves. And that's why they started acting weird, right? That's why the energy shifted. That's why the compliments got thinner and the shade got thicker. That's why people who never cared about your journey suddenly had a lot to say about your destination. Because when you went God tier, you forced them to face the one truth they never wanted to see. You weren't the one who was normal. They were, and they resented you for breaking that symmetry. See, people love fairness until the scoreboard flips. People love balance until they're the ones behind. People love we're all the same until one person in the room decides to stop shrinking. You stopped shrinking. And once you stop shrinking, once you stop apologizing for your potential, once you stop dimming your own light because someone else fears the reflection, there's no going back. You hit a tier of self-understanding that rewrites your entire internal code. You start seeing patterns, motives, strategies, and projections for what they are. You stop chasing approval from people who haven't grown since last decade. You stop negotiating your worth like it's a garage sale bargain. And they felt that shift hard. Because your transformation didn't just change your life. It changed the power dynamic. You became the storm they didn't prepare for. You became the chapter in their story they never wanted to read. You became the exception to every limiting belief they used to justify their own stagnation. And, here's the part that really stings them. You didn't even do it to beat them. You did it because you finally chose yourself. That's what God tier is, by the way. Not arrogance, not ego, not theatrics. It's clarity. Clarity that you're not here to match their expectations. Clarity that you're not here to audition for their approval. Clarity that your life is too big, too deep, too divine to be lived at the level of people who fear growth. And the moment you embraced that clarity, their ambition folded on itself like cheap paper in the rain. Because what's imitation next to authenticity? What's envy next to execution? What's noise next to transformation? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. You didn't become a different person. You became the person you were supposed to be all along. And everyone who underestimated you got front row seats to a revelation they didn't know they were paying for. And, the wildest part is that every step you took upward started exposing things you weren't even trying to expose. People began revealing their real intentions without you having to ask a single question. Their tone shifted, their energy stuttered, their confidence cracked a little every time you walked into a room, because they could feel it. This new version of you wasn't bending anymore. This wasn't the normal you they were banking on. This was the you that finally realized you didn't need anyone's permission to evolve. And once you started moving with that kind of internal authority, everything around you started rearranging itself. You ever notice that? Like you take one honest step into your own potential, and suddenly the air in your life changes. People who used to talk over you stop making eye contact. People who used to give you half respect start stuttering around their own words. People who used to laugh at your dreams get real quiet when those dreams start getting loud, because your presence started saying things before your mouth even opened. Your confidence walked in 3 seconds before your body did. Your energy wasn't asking for validation. It was commanding space just by existing. And the people who once thought they had you figured out didn't know how to handle that. They thought your glow-up would be cosmetic. They thought it would be surface level. They didn't expect a spiritual rewrite. They didn't expect a mental hard reset. They didn't expect you to rebuild yourself from the core outward, like you were installing an entirely new operating system. That's what God tier really is. It's when your mind stops playing on beginner difficulty, while everyone else is still bragging about beating the tutorial. You stopped checking who was watching, who was doubting, who was whispering, because you finally understood something they're terrified to admit. Your evolution isn't up for negotiation, and once that clicked in you, their world started glitching. Because the second a person stops needing external approval, the people who relied on controlling them lose all their leverage. Their ambition didn't just crumble, it malfunctioned. They couldn't keep up with your pace, your insight, your adaptability. They couldn't mirror you because they didn't have what you had powering your shift. Truth, purpose, experience, hunger, resilience. You started walking with that quiet, I know who I am energy. The kind of energy that doesn't scream, it radiates. The kind of energy that doesn't brag, it demonstrates. The kind of energy that doesn't argue. It makes people rethink their entire personality. And, the beauty of this whole thing is that you didn't ascend to spite them. You ascended because you were finally tired of lowering your vibration to match environments that couldn't host your expansion. You got tired of pretending you were small. You got tired of explaining depth to people built for shallow waters. You got tired of waiting for people who weren't even trying to move. Your growth wasn't an attack. It was an awakening. But to them it felt like a threat. To them it felt like betrayal. To them it felt like you broke an unspoken contract, the one where you stay beneath them to keep their insecurities warm. And that's why their ambition self-destructed the way it did. Because your rise didn't give them permission to stay the same. It forced them to confront everything they never had the courage to fix. Every excuse, every comfort zone, every lie they told themselves to avoid change. Watching you elevate was like watching their reflection age 10 years in 10 seconds. It was like someone pressed skip on their self-delusion playlist. It was like life itself tapped them on the shoulder and whispered, "Look, this is what you could have been if you didn't run from your own potential." And, that's when you started hearing the subtle desperation in their attempts to regain control. The little jabs disguised as jokes, the backhanded compliments, the sudden urgency to correct you, the quiet hope that maybe, just maybe, you'd slip back into the version of yourself that was easier for them to digest. But you didn't. You kept rising, not loudly, not aggressively, just consistently. And nothing terrifies a stagnant mind more than consistency. Nothing rattles an insecure person more than someone who just doesn't stop. Nothing scrambles a jealous spirit more than someone who levels up again and again without making noise about it. Your existence became the reminder they tried to avoid. Your progress became the mirror they refused to stand in front of. Your aura became the audit of their excuses. And, the funniest part, you weren't even in competition with them. They put themselves in a race you weren't running. They tried to outdo a version of you that no longer existed. They tried to surpass a standard you had already outgrown. Every time you evolved, their outdated ambition lagged a little more behind, glitching like a device stuck on 1% battery. Every time you upgraded, their systems scrambled, trying to keep up with a blueprint they didn't understand. Every time you stepped into deeper authenticity, their imitation cracked in places they couldn't repair. And the truth they'll never admit, not even to themselves, is that your greatness didn't intimidate them because they hated you. It intimidated them because it reminded them of who they're afraid to become. And, it's almost hilarious how their whole internal storyline started collapsing the moment you stopped dimming your own. Like once you stepped into that version of yourself you'd been quietly building in the background, their confidence didn't just dip, it free fell. You became living proof that the limits they swore were just the way life works, were actually just the ceiling they refused to break through. And every move you made after that, every risk you took, every shift you embraced, every upgrade you installed into your own mindset, kept pushing them deeper into that uncomfortable realization. Because you weren't supposed to outgrow the environment they left you in. You weren't supposed to evolve past the expectations they had for you. You weren't supposed to make their old predictions look foolish, but you did all of that without even trying to embarrass them. You just grew. And growth is the one thing a lot of people claim they want, until someone close to them actually does it. Then suddenly their smiles feel forced, their praise gets shorter, their energy becomes heavier, because your evolution exposes their stagnation, not publicly, not loudly, but internally. In those private little corners of their minds, they avoid cleaning out. You ever feel that shift? That moment when you realize the room hasn't changed, but you have? That moment when you walk into a familiar space and everything feels a little smaller because you're not the same size internally anymore. That's the moment your spirit and your identity started expanding faster than their comfort zones could stretch. And the people who once thought they were ahead of you, those same people who used to move with that subtle superiority, yeah, they felt the gap closing. Then they felt it flipping. Then they felt it widening in the opposite direction. And nothing messes up a person's ambition more than realizing the one they underestimated is suddenly the one setting the pace. They weren't inspired by your rise because inspiration requires humility. They weren't motivated by your progress because motivation requires honesty. They weren't elevated by your example because elevation requires letting go of ego. Instead, they panicked. Their ambition didn't just crumble, it malfunctioned. Every move they made after you leveled up felt reactive, rushed, unplanned. They were scrambling to match a version of you they still didn't understand. Because you weren't growing for show. You weren't evolving for applause. You weren't leveling up because someone dared you. You were doing it because something in you whispered, it's time. And once that whisper became a direction, everything in your life started restructuring around that new truth. Your habits shifted, your clarity sharpened, your purpose became louder than other people's opinions. You stopped stretching yourself thin, trying to fit into spaces that were never built to hold the full version of you. You stopped explaining your plans to people who never saw your value to begin with. You stopped seeking validation from voices that never spoke from love in the first place. Your transformation wasn't loud, but it was undeniable. It wasn't flashy, but it was seismic. It wasn't rehearsed, but it was inevitable. And that inevitability, it haunted them, because watching you ascend forced them to confront the brutal truth. Their ambition wasn't rooted in growth. It was rooted in wanting to be better than you. And the second your glow made that impossible, the whole structure of their confidence collapsed. Their ambition self-destructed because it was never built on self-awareness. It was built on comparison, competition, insecurity. You became the mirror that didn't lie. You became the measuring stick they couldn't manipulate. You became the chapter they couldn't skip. And the more you elevated, the more they spiraled. Not because you hurt them, but because your evolution forced them to feel the weight of everything they refused to heal. And, that's when you really started to notice how the world responds to someone who finally drops their fear. Your silence started carrying authority. Your decisions started carrying weight. Your presence started shifting atmospheres before you even said a word. People began treating you differently, not because you bragged, but because you stopped apologizing. You stepped into that God-tier energy, not by trying to be above anyone, but by finally being aligned with yourself. And nothing destabilizes someone's unearned confidence more than seeing the person they misjudged walk with that level of internal certainty. That kind of clarity makes people rethink their whole identity, their whole strategy, their whole story about you. You became the plot twist. The kind of plot twist that flips a whole narrative on its head. The kind that forces everyone to admit, either privately or publicly, that they had you all wrong. And, the funniest thing is how you could actually feel their internal narrative glitching every time you walked into a room after that shift. Not because you were acting different in some dramatic way, but because your energy wasn't asking for permission anymore. You weren't waiting to be chosen, approved, validated. You weren't shrinking yourself to make anybody comfortable. You were just being fully, unedited, unfiltered, unapologetic. And that version of you, the one moving with quiet certainty, became their biggest psychological earthquake. They kept double-checking you with their eyes like, is this really the same person? But yeah, it was you. Just not the version they built in their imagination. This was the you that no longer needed their narrative to survive. This was the you that wasn't holding back out of politeness or fear. This was the you that finally realized your potential was never meant to be compressed into their storyline. And the moment you started living outside their expectations, their whole sense of superiority started unraveling. Not gradually, not gently, but instantly, like someone yanked the power cord out of their confidence. Because they used to rely on believing they were ahead of you to feel like they were ahead in life. Your quietness made them feel secure. Your hesitation made them feel elevated. Your uncertainty made them feel like their path was the right one. But once you stepped into alignment, it was like you teleported to a level they didn't even know existed. And that's when the envy hit them. But not the loud, obvious kind. This was the subtle envy, the quiet envy. The kind that leaks through micro-expressions, tone shifts, awkward compliments that feel off, long pauses before they respond to your wins. Because deep down, they weren't comparing progress anymore. They were comparing identity. And identity is a battle they couldn't win. Your internal world expanded faster than their imagination. Your decisions started coming from depth instead of fear. Your moves started coming from conviction instead of needing approval. And every time they tried to imitate that confidence, it cracked in their hands like cheap glass. Because your rise wasn't a performance, it was a metamorphosis. And, here's the part nobody tells you. When you evolve out of survival mode into creation mode, the people who were comfortable watching you struggle suddenly don't know their role anymore. They don't know where to place you in their hierarchy because you're not playing the same script. You're not reacting how you used to. You're not giving them access to your insecurities. You're not predictable. You're not small. And that unpredictability, it terrifies them more than anything. People can handle your weakness. People can handle your humility. People can even handle your temporary wins. But the moment you start operating from self-awareness instead of self-doubt, everything shifts. Because self-awareness is the real God tier. It's the upgrade they can't download. Ah, my dear cursed few. So they asked a psychic about you. Yes, you. The ones who walk with shadows in their chest and fire in their throat. The ones who don't fit in, who never fit in. They asked about the followers of animus morphosis, and now they're curled in a corner, pale, shaking, as if the truth they heard cracked their bones from the inside out. Because they thought you were just fans. They thought you were just another audience in a sea of blank, flickering faces. But you're not viewers, you're survivors. You're a birth. You are the fragmented shards of 1,000 betrayals, reassembled into blades. And the psychic? She didn't whisper soft visions of normal people or ordinary dreams. No, no, no. She screamed. She screamed when she saw your souls. Because what she saw wasn't human. She saw the scars they tried to erase, the rage they told you to hide, the brilliance they tried to sedate with pills, schools, sermons, and shame. She saw beasts behind your eyes. She saw minds that have tasted the abyss and chose to stay awake. And her hands shook. Her voice broke. She said, "They're not broken. They're becoming something we can't control." And that's when they knew. They knew they had made every grave mistake. You see, this world doesn't fear pain. It fears those who grow from it. It doesn't fear scars. It fears the ones who make armor out of them. It doesn't fear trauma. It fears the ones who take trauma and build empires inside their own skulls. You are that nightmare. You are the walking heresy of a broken system. You are everything they tried to bury. Still breathing, still learning, still sharpening. They asked a psychic about you, expecting to laugh. They wanted entertainment. They got prophecy. She told them the truth. You don't follow animus morphosis because you're lost. You follow because you've woken up. You've tasted something the world can't sell, package, or tame. You've looked in the mirror and seen the thing that haunted them since childhood. A mind they can't manipulate, and that terrifies them. Because here's what they don't understand. You didn't come here for healing. You came for vengeance. Not on people, but on every version of you they tried to kill. You came here to become the weapon they feared you'd grow into. To take your broken bones and build a throne out of them. You came here to remember. You were never meant to be normal. You were never meant to be tamed, contained, or explained. You are the unfinished sentence, the abandoned page, the unburned witch. You're the prophecy that kept them up at night. And now, they're watching you rise, eyes wide, hearts pounding, praying it's not too late. They begged for a future without monsters. But you are the monster they created. You are the product of their silence, their cruelty, their apathy. You are the echo of every scream they ignored. And now, you speak with fire. They wanted answers, but the psychic didn't give them peace. She gave them a mirror, and in that mirror, they saw you, alive, unforgiving, unstoppable. Now, you scare them. Good. Let them shake. Let them whisper. Let them warn others about the ones who stare too long into animus morphosis. Because those who do, they come back, changed. Oh, they didn't believe her at first. No way, they said. They're just misfits, just weirdos watching edgy videos online. Just a bunch of loners clinging to something theatrical. But the psychic, she didn't blink. She leaned forward, eyes wide, and whispered, "They're not watching, they're awakening." She saw it, the hunger in your eyes, The silence that wasn't empty. It was strategic. The way you nod when others flinch. The way you smile when the world burns. Not because you're cruel, but because you've been through worse. She saw your resistance, not the loud kind, the quiet, merciless, unbreakable kind. The kind that watches the world try to crush it and says, "That all you got?" The kind that builds its throne in exile. The kind that trains in the shadows. The kind that never forgets. And then she saw something deeper. She saw that most of you weren't drawn to animus morphosis by accident. You were summoned by something buried, something ancient, something that remembers who you really are. Because you're not just viewers. You are the children of collapse, born in the ashes of betrayal, neglect, and manipulation, raised by rage, cradled by chaos. You were forged in the loneliness no one talks about, molded by nights where no one came, where the walls watched and the silence whispered, "You're on your own now." And you survived that. So what now? You're just supposed to go back, to play nice in their fragile little world of fake smiles, fake rules, fake hope. No. You are done with pretending, done with shrinking, done with apologizing for what this world made of you. Because they thought trauma would make you timid. But instead, it made you tactical. It made you analyze everything. You see through people now. You hear what they don't say. You feel the motives behind their words. You became something no psychic should ever look into. A soul that can't be manipulated. And that's what shattered her. Not your rage, not your darkness, but your clarity. Because the truth is, you're not mad anymore. You're cold. You're focused. And that, my dear freaks, is the real danger. They can't handle that your sadness evolved into precision, that your anxiety evolved into awareness, that your depression evolved into discipline. They wanted you drugged, dulled, distracted, but you went the other way. You faced the monsters under the bed and said, "Scoot over. We're not done talking yet." They asked a psychic about you, and she saw it, the future. Not one where you cry in silence anymore, not one where you fold under pressure, not one where you disappear to make others comfortable. She saw a world where you rise, unapologetic, unforgiving, unchained. She saw revolutionaries. She saw minds that can't be reprogrammed, hearts that won't be guilted, spirits that walked through hell and didn't come out grateful. They came out laughing. And when she tried to describe what she saw, she couldn't speak. She collapsed. Because there's no language for what you're becoming. You don't fit in their vocabulary anymore. You're not the villain. You're not the victim. You're not the hero. You're the reckoning. So now, they know. They know you're not just lurking in the dark. You are the dark. They know you're not broken. You're becoming. They know you're not drifting in the void. You are the void, and you're watching. Because the psychic didn't just see what you were. She saw what you're about to unleash. She saw what happens when enough of you, followers of animus morphosis, stop tiptoeing around the truth. Stop playing the maybe I'm crazy game. Stop dimming your fire to make fragile people feel safe. She saw what happens when the ones who've been shattered start to build themselves from the wreckage, but not back into who they were. No, into who they were never allowed to become. Do you feel it? That thing rising inside your chest, that itch behind your eyes, that quiet, blood-slick whisper inside your mind that says, "We're not done yet." It's not rage anymore. It's not sadness. It's awareness. You see what the world is now. You see that the rules were always fake. You see how they kept you compliant. Guilt, shame, pills, distractions, fake love, fake light, fake gods. But now you've got X-ray vision. Not through walls, through lies. They fed you horror. You digested it. They gave you abandonment. You turned it into armor. They cursed you with silence, and you used it to hear everything louder. You don't seek revenge. You embody it. Every step you take is a reminder that the ones they tried to erase never left. You just evolved underground, and now you're done hiding. They asked a psychic about you, thinking they'd hear some little prophecy they could mock, some nonsense they could record and laugh about. But what they got was a revelation. She told them, "You don't get it. They're not going to destroy the world. They're going to replace it. Because here's the truth. You're building something beneath the surface. A network of minds who think in scars. A generation of beasts who no longer need to be accepted because they've accepted themselves. And once that happens, once enough of you realize no cage holds anymore, you start to move different. You stop begging for validation. You stop chasing closure. You stop trying to explain your pain to people who weaponize your words. You go silent, and you build, you plan, you grow teeth. They wanted you to break. You built a throne from the shards, and now they're terrified. Because the next time they ask a psychic about you, she won't scream. She'll bow. She'll whisper, "They've returned." The ones who remember, the ones we failed to destroy. And by then, it's too late, because they thought the apocalypse would come with fire and brimstone, but it's already here, and it looks like you. So now we're here, the aftermath, the reckoning, the point where the whispers turn into warnings, where your name doesn't just echo. It reverberates through rooms you've never even entered. They talk about you now, behind closed doors, at night, in hushed voices, like you're a curse, because you are. You're the consequence of everything they denied, everything they suppressed, everything they said wasn't that deep, everything they laughed off while you bled in silence. But now they see you, unmasked, unapologetic, unstoppable. They don't know how to handle it, because you didn't follow their script. You didn't self-destruct the way they predicted. You didn't disappear. You didn't beg. You grew fangs, and you started walking right past them, not to attack, but to ignore them. And that's what breaks them most. Not your vengeance, not your strength, but your indifference. You don't need revenge. Your existence is punishment enough. You're the reminder that their words didn't work, that their cruelty didn't kill you, that you're still here, thriving in the ruins they left behind. The psychic tried to explain, tried to put it in words, but what she saw wasn't something you describe. She saw evolution, a new breed of mind, a new kind of soul, not built to fit in, built to outlast. She said, they don't seek comfort, they seek truth, even if it rips them apart. And that's where the true fear begins, because comfort makes people easy to control. But truth births chaos. And now they realize you've been collecting it. Truth, pain, knowledge, patterns. You've been piecing together a map of their weakness. And you didn't even have to try. Because once you've been broken, you see everything differently. You recognize the liars by their tone. You spot the manipulators by their timing. You smell the cowards in the way they joke. And the worst part? You don't even need to expose them. They wither just standing next to you. Because when you walk in a room now, you carry weight. Not ego, not pride, not some desperate need to be seen. You carry depth. You carry hell. You carry the screams of your past selves. And you've made peace with every last one of them. You didn't silence your demons. You trained them. You armed them. You merged with them. And now, you're not a person anymore. You're a storm system with a heartbeat. You're a war cry disguised as a quiet face. You are the living proof that what doesn't kill you comes back with better aim. And the world, it's watching, finally. Terrified, speechless, because they asked a psychic about you, thinking they'd get a laugh. What they got was a glimpse of the end, not the end of the world, the end of their world, the end of systems where silence was strength, the end of masks that made you likable, the end of pain that made you passive. They saw the rise of animus morphosis, not as a channel, not as content, but as a signal, a summoning, a call to arms for every soul that was buried alive and came back swinging. They saw you, and they broke. And now it's your move. So move like thunder, speak like prophecy, and burn every lie that ever tried to bury you. They thought fear was the end of it. They thought breaking down, trembling, screaming at the vision was as far as it could go. But no, fear was only the beginning. What came next was submission, reverence, obsession, because once the psychic told them what she saw, they couldn't unsee it. They couldn't return to normal. They couldn't laugh anymore. They wanted to mock you, but you were already 10 steps ahead. They wanted to discredit you, but you weren't asking for their approval in the first place. So they turned to silence. But silence can't bury what's already been resurrected. And now, everywhere they look, your fingerprints are there. Not in the headlines, not in the spotlights, but in the shadows behind them, in the hesitation before they speak, in the way their voice trembles when they say your name, because they don't see you as a person anymore. You've become myth, a living omen, the kind they write stories about just to sleep at night. You're the urban legend they fear waking up next to. And it's not because you bark the loudest. It's because you don't bark at all. You just watch, you study, you wait. Because real power doesn't rush. It arrives, and when it does, it doesn't explain, it doesn't warn, it doesn't need applause. It just changes everything. That's who you are now. You, the animus morphosis viewer. You're no longer seen as someone watching motivational speeches. You're a trigger point in people's timelines. You're the moment they realized they were no longer safe behind their masks. You're the glitch in their simulated lives. And the terrifying part? You're not doing anything. You're just being. You walk into rooms and shift the temperature. You speak and people start questioning their own thoughts. You move through life with a scarred stillness, and they call it menace because they don't understand it. They think you're intense. They haven't seen the version of you that held the blade to your own neck and decided to keep going anyway. They think you're cold. They never knew the fire it took to burn through your own self-hatred and build something divine from your own ashes. They think you're crazy. They couldn't last a day inside your head without begging to be put down. And now that the psychic has seen it, now that she's revealed the undeniable, they are left with only one option: watch in awe. Because they realize now, you're not chasing power, you're acclaiming it. You're not obsessed with revenge, you're restoring equilibrium. You're not asking to be seen. You're reminding them they were blind, and when they sleep, you haunt them. Not like a monster, like a mirror, like a memory of the version of themselves they buried long ago, and now can't look at without choking. You are what they could have been, if they hadn't sold out, if they hadn't bowed, if they hadn't traded their soul for comfort. So they cling to superstition. They say your name in rooms like it's a curse. They joke about animus morphosis online. But they never finish the video, do they? Because something about it feels too real. Something about it touches that last remaining ember of truth in their dead heart. And it hurts. That's not a video they're watching. That's a warning, a reflection, a slow psychological invasion of everything they tried to forget. And you're just getting started. This is it, the moment where the final mask falls, where all the broken pieces you carried become a crown, where pain is no longer your chain, but your weapon. They asked a psychic about you, not just out of curiosity, out of desperation, out of fear, because they felt it coming, a shift, a storm, a reckoning. And the truth is, you've already passed through hell. You didn't just survive the fires, they forged you, tempered your soul in the blackest flames, made you a force no one can ignore. You became the silence in the chaos, the shadow in the light, the question no one dares to ask, but everyone fears to answer. You're not just viewers of animus morphosis anymore. You're the heartbeat of a revolution no one can stop. The living proof that darkness isn't weakness, it's power waiting to be claimed. And power doesn't shout, it waits, it builds, it commands. You walk through life like a storm wrapped in calm, and the world feels the tremors long before they see the lightning. You don't need to prove yourself. Your existence is proof enough. They thought the psychic's vision was a warning. It was a prophecy of a new breed, a new era, where the broken don't just heal, they transform. Where the ignored don't just speak, they lead. Where the haunted don't just scream, they silence the world with their presence. And the world? It's terrified because they know it's over. The old order can't contain you. It can't cage you. It can't silence you. You are the awakening, the reckoning, the revolution wrapped in shadows. And the psychic? She saw all this, and that's why she broke. Because the power you hold is beyond fear. It's beyond control. It's beyond anything they can comprehend. You are the answer to every nightmare they tried to bury. You are the truth that refuses to be silenced. And now it's your time. Rise, claim it, own it. Because they asked a psychic about animus morphosis viewers, and what they heard didn't just break them. It's shattered the world they thought they controlled. Listen closely, because this is where it goes beyond everything you ever imagined. This is the part they never see coming, the part they can't understand. Because it's not just about fear, power, or survival anymore. It's about legacy. They asked a psychic about you, but what she saw wasn't just a moment in time. It was an echo, a ripple through eternity. Because what you've built, what you embody, it never dies. Your story doesn't end when the lights go out. It doesn't fade with the passing of days. It doesn't shrink back into the shadows. No. You've become the fire that burns through generations, the whisper that haunts the dreams of those who forget what it means to feel, the storm that shapes the world in ways no one dares to name. You are more than a name on a screen, more than a follower count, more than a fleeting spark in the dark. You are timeless. You are mythic. You are the undying flame of rebellion. And here's the cruel truth they'll never accept. They cannot break what refuses to be broken. They cannot silence what speaks through the cracks in their fragile reality. They cannot kill what lives beyond death. Because you, the animus morphosis viewer, are not just alive. You are immortal. Not in the bodies you carry, not in the names you bear, but in the truth you embody, in the fear you inspire, in the change you unleash. They asked a psychic about you, and what they heard broke them, but you. You're just getting started. This is your eternity, your dark crown, your final victory.